Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 17 of the Left Wing Propaganda Podcast. My name is Richard the Dick Coughlin, and there's no musical introduction this week, no sort of haphazard, accidental, in quotes, introduction by Hanson Umbop. I apologise. I'm not in my usual environments at the moment. I've actually been away for the last week. You'll have to excuse me if you hear some banging in the background. I'm staying somewhere where there's a lot of workmen, a lot of big sweaty men working away and trying to build the place. So you'll have to excuse me. But welcome to the Left Wing Propaganda Podcast, episode number 17. I apologise it's taken so long. Had a bit of a busy month this week. In fact, the last week I've been literally all over the place. The reason I'm not where I am at the moment is because I've been gigging all over the place, doing other bits and pieces. I've been in Manchester, Brighton, and that's it really. But yeah, I've basically been here. So I want to. But other than that, thank you. Also, thank you very much. I was checking my statistics for this podcast on the website where it is hosted on Spreaker.com, and I am literally fucking murdering. It's like I'm a one man. It's like I am a teenager with a gun walking into a high school in America. I'm massacring every motherfucker around here, and that's thanks to you guys, and so thank you very much for that. You can support the podcast, you can download it on iTunes. If you're on iTunes, please go and you can sign up for Left Wing Propaganda Podcast there, or you can just listen to it on Spreaker.com, or if you're on Stitcher Radio, you can do it that way. So thank you very much to everyone who's done that, and also thank you to the people who are supporting me on my Patreon. My Patreon, which it's around about $500 a month at the moment, so I'm getting there. The $13.50 target is miles away. I mean, decades from now is where we're looking at this. But Monkey's taking. We might actually have a fucking hoverboard by the time I get, and I won't be able to afford one either. It'll be a fortune. But so thank you very much for that. If you want to support the podcast, if you don't have money, that's perfectly fine. But please do download the podcast. That's all I ask for people. It's something you can do. It makes all the difference in the world to the coverage this podcast gets. Is if you download it. We're closing in on 8,000 downloads, which for a show that's been going less than a year and is now only on its 17th episode is pretty fucking spectacular. Before I get cracking on this, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I need to address, and I want to make clear this is the one and only time I'm addressing this. It ends here, really, at this point, and to be honest, probably a lot of you may not even know what the fuck I'm talking about. If you're a follower of mine on Facebook or on Twitter, you may have a better idea, but this is one of those blips on social media that, if I were a much more important and famous person, would have been a bigger deal. But other than that, thankfully, because I'm a nobody and I'm bordering on, bordering on irrelevance, I'm sitting comfortably in irrelevance. It didn't go any further. Basically, what happened was a couple of months ago. I think it was about a month ago. I posted a joke on Twitter, and it was a joke connected with a hashtag. This joke for ages went unseen, and I didn't think anything of it. And then on Tuesday night, my Twitter feed, in relative terms to what my Twitter feed normally is like, it literally erupts with just people absolutely horrifically disgusted with me, calling me God knows what else, and everything else under the sun. And I kind of didn't know where the hell this had come from. And apparently this joke of mine had been someone whose name I'm not going to mention because they're not worth mentioning. But there's someone who they should know better, who does know better, and someone who clearly, considering the length of time that passed from when I last posted this person clearly went out of their way to try and find something they could take of mine and that they could promote. And they tweeted this out, and they did it in that typical way that they did it in that way that I really hate, when people share out a tweet of yours without you knowing. And they don't tell you about, so you don't know what's coming, and you don't know what it is. You don't have a chance to sort of defend yourself from what's coming on. I'm not going to defend. I'm not making excuses there. That's just a fact of what happened there. I'll repeat the joke, right? And I'm repeating the joke for clarity, because I want everyone to. I want this to be. I don't want anyone to think that I've undersold what happened. The joke was a hashtag on Twitter that was hashtag 5 words that can ruin a date. and I put hashtag 5 words to ruin a date, and it was, so that's what pre-op means, right? Now, my thinking when I posted this was not in any way to sort of to be derogatory or to be be bigoted towards transgendered people. The idea that the thinking in my mind behind how that came about was, there's a guy who answers a dating site or something, and someone's got pre-op on their profile, but this guy doesn't know what that means, so he goes out on the date not knowing what that means. One thing leads to another, pants come off. Oh, that's what pre-op means. That was what it was going for. This was taken. This was taken as some kind of sort of point and laugh at the man. Point and laugh at the lady with the penis kind of thing, and that was in no way my intention. And a lot of people were offended with. A lot of people who were, who not just random people. There's a lot of people who knew. There were a lot of people, by the way, who were quite reasonable. Who, didn't like it, didn't like the joke, didn't find it funny. And I want to admit now, it was not a good joke. This is why it was posted at some fucking ungodly hour on Twitter, and has not seen the light of day since. That tends to be what happens. Sometimes I just sort of, you think of things, you just spit them out, and then if something sticks, then it tends to sort of, it tends to go somewhere else. But there were a lot of people who were who spoke to me and were quite reasonable and understanding, who know me, who know that I'm not the sort of, and I hope that I don't have to say this to certain people. I know there are people out there who don't know me. Right, and so for them, they're not going to know. They've got no reason to believe that this is true. I want to make this clear. I have absolutely my support for the LGBT community, and everything they've gone through has been, I think, well documented. It's unwavering. I've been a supporter of everything, and I've supported every single campaign they have had for equality and acceptance in the last, as best I can, to the best of my ability, over the last 13, 14 years. And and to the people who genuinely, and I admit it wasn't a good joke, and sometimes when you write a bad joke, and it's about and it's on an area that I don't know, I'm not one of the, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you saying I've got loads of transgendered friends. I don't, right? And most people don't. And so most people who say that, it's like people who say I've got loads of black friends. No, you don't, right? Most people don't. And to the people who, if that was in any way triggering to you, if that upset you, if you felt that I was somehow having a pointing and a laughing at you for being different, that was not my intention at all. I apologise for that, and I'm genuinely sorry. And I hope we can move on and we can go back to the way things were. To the people who were hysterical, I doubt you'll even listen to this, because there are some people who were being quite. I'm not going to repeat or go into or give names out, because it will do us no good. I just want to end this now. I am genuinely sorry for that. And I do admit, when it first happened, I got a bit defensive, and I got a bit and I maybe overreacted, and I was getting a bit, oh fuck you, a lot of it. And that's just human nature. That happens. I haven't taken the joke down. I'm not going to take it down, because I don't want to be one of these people, because if I take it down, then you're going to get people who sort of trying to accuse me of hiding things. I'm not going to hide in it. I don't just want to be one of these people who just lets you see the good things that I do. The bad things I do need to be seen as well. And so that was a bad thing. That was something bad I did. I do, like I said, I do feel that there was kind of an agenda amongst the people who did it, but that doesn't detract from the fact there were a lot of people I seem to have genuinely hurt with that, and I hope we can now move on. So let's put our big boy pants on and crack on with the rest of it, because in the last few weeks there's been I had to sort of I was hoping to have done this a week ago, and then I nearly literally died on Saturday night. I was at a party, and I'm not joking, I thought I was going to fucking die, and so did people there. I went as white as a fucking sheet, sweating absolute buckets. I thought I was puking my ever-loving fucking soul out. There'll be lots of theories, I no doubt, as to what I took that caused it. ranging from many different chemical-based substances. I think it's got something to do with the sat-out and slightly very warm, slightly cold cheeseburgers I ate on the way there before I arrived from Burger King. So, but that's Burger King sponsorship out of the fucking way. Thanks. So, yeah, but it might be something that. But I was fucking. Oh God. So that's probably why this has taken a little bit longer. I have been ill, and I've been sort of recovering from that for the rest of the week. In terms of what's been happening last week, there's been a few interesting stories last week. Well, there's the Super Bowl. I'm going to get the Super Bowl out of the way, because the Super Bowl is one of these weird things. It's like everyone knows about the Super Bowl. It's the only sort of sporting event. See, like the World Cup, everyone gets into the World Cup. You know, you get into. There's all these sporting events that everyone gets into around the world. And there's all that, and they go on all that, but there's something like the Super Bowl. I mean, a Super Bowl, it's a sporting event where, statistically, apparently, 25% of the people who watch it for the fucking adverts. Could you? I mean, what sport? Can you imagine someone watching the Ashes purely because they wanted to see the fucking beer commercials, or someone's watching the Sunday football, someone's watching Chelsea versus Arsenal on a Sunday because they want to see Ray Winston's decapitated fucking head give them betting. It's absolutely. And this year there was a whole scandal. The whole scandal was over this thing called Deflategate, where apparently the ball was let down by one of the teams. I'll not say the ball is the only thing on that pitch. If you include the players, if you look at the players, the ball is the only thing on that fucking pitch that hasn't been overinflated and fit to bursting point. It hasn't been injected with something to make it much more oversized than it fucking should be. I suppose that's maybe just karma and Mother Nature balancing stuff out. But American football is not a sport. It's a music festival and a corporate. It's like a big corporate gig music festival, and occasionally in between it you'll have some sporting event that involves a bunch of drugged up, oversized, steroid filled, nutters, dressed as RoboCop, headbutting each other. That's all I can make out. I don't know what the rules are. It's unnecessarily long and overly complicated, and it's shit. And it's why it's never caught on anywhere ever. Another funny thing, and I don't normally talk about sport, and neither do I normally talk about like celebrity stuff either. But last week, Celebrity Big Brother in this country. Now, I was quite pleased with Celebrity Big Brother this year. I didn't watch it, but I was pleased because Katie Hopkins was in it. I won't go into detail about her. I'm sure she will pop up at some point in the future. But Katie Hopkins, horrid, vile human being, kind of like the Ann Coulter of this country. With less of an Adam's apple, but she's one of these. I mean, she lists as her when she was interviewed on Big Brother. She listed as her people she hates. Now you think of people you hate. You can think of things like, oh, I hate racists, or I hate people who beat up their violent partners. I hate football hooligans. Maybe I hate whatever. I hate people who abuse animals. She lists as the three people she hates: fat people, the unemployed, and gingers. Right? She writes for the Sun newspaper, and the reason I was glad she was in there is because it meant that she was cut off from the world in terms of it started just like a few days before the Charlie Hebdo attacks, so I was quite grateful for them to have her in there. It meant we were spared her, quote unquote opinion that she would have had for money. To get there, but she apparently, when she was in there, and I didn't watch it, she was in there. Now Perez Hilton, who is an equally vacuous and horrid human being, was in there, who is unfortunately a lot more annoying. And compared to her, she came across quite, and she nearly ended up fucking winning it. And I'm not joking. I would have considered emigrating if she'd fucking won. And I was talking to my parents who don't know who don't know much about Katie Hopkins, but they're like, what's a? She seems all right. She's just opinion. And I'm like, no, she's literally it's like, it drives me fucking mad when you get these people, these horrid individuals who go on a fucking. This is like when Hitler, had the Olympics. People came back from the Olympics in Berlin, and everyone thought, what a great Olympics it was, and because the Olympics was great, everyone started. This is the same thing. Yes, I know I'm violating Godwin's law very early on into the show, But fuck this, right? And thankfully she didn't win. Katie Price won. And Katie Price, whose worst crime is getting her tits out, and her tits have done more to fucking improve my life than certainly Katie Hopkins' gob has ever done. But getting back to actual news, there was an interesting thing about the Pope. Two stories about the Pope, really. The first one was that he came out in defence of smacking children. He didn't sort of come out and say, yes, you've got to come out strong. No, he basically saying that it's not always a bad thing, was essentially his thing. And obviously I don't agree with him on this. However, I can think of why the Pope might have come to this conclusion, or may have this view. I mean, this is a guy who has to spend every day. He has to spend his life dealing with men who sexually abuse and fuck kids. So if you spend your entire day doing that, when you hear about someone smacking a kid, you probably think, oh, if you only knew what the fuck I have to see and put up with every day. Right, it's like to him, a kid getting smacked is an actual is a blessed release for them, compared to the shit he has to get through. But I don't know though. I mean, to be honest, who gives a fuck what the Pope thinks about anything? I'm surprised. I mean, given when you look at the horrific, track record of the Catholic Church, I'm amazed the Pope can say anything that offends people anymore. Although this Pope, there was another interesting story in the same week. Apparently the Pope has been going around organising for free, making sure that Italy has the most well-groomed and turned out tramps that it can possibly see. He's been going around. He offers basically for the tramps who are in the area, the homeless in the area, he offers free shaving and showering. Not a house or food. I mean, that's not that's not the problem. No, they want showering and shaving, which is at least something. Although it is ironic that even when the Catholic Church does something nice and it involves adults, it still involves grooming, right? So that's those stories. Those are the silly ones. But let's move on now to. I mean, this is one of the reasons also I had to sort of pull back on this, because there's been this story called the Capitol Hill shooting, is how it's being known as. It happened a couple of days ago. I'm sure you probably all know about this. You don't need me to go into the details. Basically the way it's being put out in the media, the way it's being sold, is an atheist killed 3 Muslims. Now, obviously, when something like this happening just shortly after the Charlie Hebdo thing is, I think, kind of puts a different whole spin on the damn thing. But let's be clear at this stage. No one knows why this really happened yet. And the fact that the reason they know this guy was an atheist is because they went onto his Facebook and he was posting anti-religious stuff online. Now, let's look at it logically. The odd. I'm not trying to sort of detract away whether he was or not an atheist. We'll get onto that, right? But the fact is, this is where it seems to be going from. Now, I don't know whether this. I get the impression this may be an attempt by the media to try and appear as if they are treating all other groups the same. Because there's always that point of whenever a Muslim does anything bad, it's always the fact that they're a Muslim. It seems to matter. And let's be honest, if this had been a Muslim killing 3 atheists, I don't think people would be sitting around waiting to find out why or not that it happened. Now, there's this one story that this was over some parking dispute. Who knows? I don't know. That certainly seems to be a factor in the story or in what happened. But then there's other people saying that the way they were shot, it was an accident. I mean, do you kill 3 people over a parking dispute? I mean, maybe in America you do. That could be quite common in that. But I want to make something clear here. Whenever this is whenever it's a Muslim doing something and it comes out, and this has been Muslim kills atheists, we would have had people sort of going, we would have had all the, it would have immediately been an Islamic or a religiously motivated crime. It would have been a crime, and it would have been all of the other, it would have immediately been connected. You'd have had Bill Maher and Sam Harris jumping up and down on this like God knows what. The truth is, we don't know why this guy did it. And to be honest, given the sort of randomness of it, I don't think we ever will. This is not like an Anders Breivik thing where he went to the trouble of writing a manifesto and planning it out, and we can pretty much figure out why that did it. It isn't like this isn't like a sort of terrorist attack like the Charlie Hebdo ones or like 9/11 or anything else, where we know that there's a big long trail of planning that goes into it. We don't know. But I want to say this, right? I have seen lots of atheists immediately jump out and say, sort of to distance themselves from this. And I just want to say to you, to the atheists doing that, you don't need to. You don't need to do that. Right? Nobody needs to do that. There's no need for anyone to... I don't know why this guy did what he did, but we don't need to... this is the whole point of when I was trying to make in my last podcast about the Charlie Hebdo thing, is that people shouldn't have to... People who've done nothing should not feel the need to come out and say something about an incident that they clearly have nothing to do with. And it's good that people, and I don't doubt the sincerity of it, and I don't think it's I don't doubt that the people who've done so are being genuine. What I do doubt is, what I do wonder is are you just doing it because you feel that because you've done it so often to Muslims or other groups, do you feel that now it's your responsibility to do so? Because it's not. The same way that the same way it's no one else. It's not just because you're a Marilyn Manson fan, you don't have to come out and condemn the fucking Columbine massacre. We don't need to do these things. Or a Satan. Did they? What, I don't know what religion they claim to be. But there have been people who claim to be Satanists who go out and do. We don't ask Satanists to, and we shouldn't. We don't ask people and we only do it with religious belief, which I find interesting. I mean, it shouldn't matter, really. I mean, should it? Let's say this guy killed 3 people because he hated religion, because they were Muslim and he's an atheist. Let's say he did that. Is that any better or worse than him just doing it over a parking dispute? Is it? I mean, 3 people are dead who shouldn't be dead, killed by someone over a reason that is. That is unjustifiable. That is not with. There's no defence of that. So you don't need to. None of us need to. So let's just not. That's all I'm going to say on that. I think time will tell as to what more. But as time goes on, we'll find out more about this guy. Maybe we'll find out more about it. But at the moment, that's all I've got to say is, this thing happens. Whatever it did happen, It's inconsequential to you. You don't need to. No one needs to feel bad or guilty about it, right? Unless you were involved in it, right? If you do, I mean, obviously, if you do feel, guilty about it, then maybe you should ask yourself why. Right? And would you be, if this had been the other way around, would you be treating this? Would you be looking at this with the same sort of? Would you feel the same way? Would you be giving this people the benefit of the doubt? Or would you be doing the normal, the Muslims never speak out or say anything, blah, 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 because I've got a funny feeling what the answer is. Speaking of Charlie Hebdo, it's very interesting, and one of the points I made when I was doing my podcast a few weeks ago, one of the points I was trying to make in there was how selective we are when it comes to defending freedom of speech, and how really our defences, our protests, and our unifying. We have our little catch. We had Je suis Charlie, and we had a big march, and there was all these world leaders, all of whom have got multiple violations for imprisoning people simply for expressing an opinion, and for murdering people, or executing people, or torturing people for doing things like writing things in magazines or saying things on Twitter, all there arm in arm to defend freedom of speech. And the whole point was about how selective we are. And an interesting story happened that I thought just sums this whole up. Because one of the people who came out at the time, following the Charlie Hebdo thing, was Mark Zuckerberg, who is the guy obviously who owns Facebook. And he came out and sort of with this massive, big sort of post on Facebook, sort of saying about how whilst obviously Facebook is not subject to things like the First Amendment or the Human Rights Act. It's a privately owned company on the internet. It works within its own parameters. It decides what it wants on and what it doesn't. But one of the things that it said was it does not want. He said that he sees Facebook as a place where that is going to facilitate freedom of speech, where people will be allowed to post what they want, and simply we would never censor someone as a threat, because there was a threat of any kind or anything like that. We would never stop someone from expressing their views or posting a picture or a drawing or saying something. Now, anyone. Now, I've been suspended enough times from Facebook because of their lack or inability to recognise someone, using a word sarcastically or satirically. So, so I know that that's bollocks for a start. But if you were going to do that, you would have no terms. You wouldn't have a terms of service. You wouldn't have a sort of posting guidelines thing, would you? But interestingly, that sort of went out the window because in Turkey, the people of Turkey sort of said to Mark Zuckerberg, we want you to censor any images or any groups or anything, any images of the Prophet Muhammad need to be censored in Turkey. Otherwise, Turkey will not allow Facebook. And Mark Zuckerberg, he probably thought about it for 2 or 3 minutes and was like, he went from 2 weeks ago, oh, freedom of speech, very important, we want to facilitate free. I'm losing money in Turkey, fuck that shit. And then suddenly it's like, freedom, it's subjective, isn't it? Isn't it free? Isn't freedom subjective when you think about it? So that's how we end. So he ends up caving. Yeah, so just go. But of course, there's no outrage. There's not going to be anyone jumping up and down because you need Facebook, don't you? Let's face it, we all love Facebook. We all need it, and we're not going to sit there and have a protest over that because again, it doesn't involve anyone blowing up. And that's really only when freedom of speech we feel we're defending freedom of speech needs to be countered. It's when something's going to blow up or someone's going to die, and that could potentially be you because it's random, right? When it involves the state or the government trying to impose a law or trying to legally, stop you from expressing your freedom, then people don't sit. There's no sort of big need for people to get off their soapbox because at the end of the day, it's targeting individuals and it's targeting specific things that may not affect you. The idea that you might suddenly blow up or explode or be shot, that's enough for you to defend freedom of speech. But if it's not, if it's someone else's problem, we tend to look the other way. I mean, I think the time has come to say, look, and this idea of freedom, this freedom humping that happens in politics, and it happens all the time. You just see politicians; they just go out and they say freedom, and that's it. They just come out and they say freedom, and that's it. Freedom is. I'm going to say it now, and we need to start having this discussion because we can all agree that freedom of this, freedom of expression, we can all agree that there's certain types of freedom are good things, but we need to have this discussion about that freedom on its own, as a concept, as an absolute, is not always a good thing, and that one man's freedom will always come at the cost of another man's inconvenience at the best. And you get, and people buy into this crap, and it's used to fucking guilt you into aiding and abetting people like the according to the Koch brothers, who are worth $50 billion, and it's a sum of money I cannot even begin to fathom. I couldn't wake up in the morning knowing I had that much money, and all I could think of was how can I screw even fucking more. These people aren't fucking. These people have gone beyond being rich and wealthy and wanting to have. They're basically hoarders. I mean, there's people who keep their turds in jars dating back to the 1970s. So there's people who keep piles of earwax. Or their bogies, or all their old fucking hair or toenail clippings, and going back decades, and they can't throw them out. They just need more and more and more. My pornography playlist on my VLC media player could be used as a comparison. There's enough there. There is more than enough there. I don't need any more. It now goes on for what I believe is close to 506 hours if you played it start to finish, right? 500, I don't know how long that is, right? That's getting on for close to 3 weeks, right? 3 fucking weeks, right? I've just sat there, I think that's enough. You don't need more, but I still download it, right? So from that point, I'm a hypocrite. But from the other point, you get these people Koch brothers who own Koch Industries. They're legally obligated to fulfil certain government regulations when it comes to health and safety, and they'll have you believe that it's an impediment to their freedom, that they should be allowed to, and then they sell you down the river of this idea that, oh, it's trustworthy, you can trust us. Why would we sell you a bad product? People just wouldn't. Bullshit. When you've got 50 billion, you can afford to lose it, you know. And this is what these people, and it's not enough for them. They can't just use the common sense approach. They can't do the right thing I would do, that we would all do. Go to your health and safety officer. You know, if you've got your regulations, go to your health and safety officer and bribe the fucker. Get him to fill in the forms. Give him a cheeky $5 million. You won't miss it. He can fuck off to Bermuda, or find some non-extradition island he can go piss off to. And by the time it all gets round and they realise the papers are forged, it doesn't fucking matter anyway. And yes, it comes at the expense and the risk of your workers' health and safety. But fuck it, they'll just sue you. You know, and you can pay them off, give them fun. You know, you've got the money to lose. You know, you could pay all these people off, and you'd earn more money in interest at the end of the day by sitting on your arse. When you can earn millions a day by sitting on your arse doing nothing, you know, your freedom is the least of my fucking concerns, right? Right. This idea of freedom needs to be fucking knocked on the fucking head, right? And because And we need to have the discussion about what freedom as an absolute doesn't need to happen. Now, there's one other thing that's interesting. Speaking of interesting discussions, it's been one thing that happened. It was Holocaust Memorial Day a little while ago, and the sad thing is, and again we go into the world of politics. The sad thing is, Holocaust Memorial Day is a day that we don't need a Holocaust Memorial Day. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have one because fuck the Holocaust. I mean it because we are reminded of the Holocaust every frigging fucking day of our lives, aren't we? I mean, we literally cannot go. When was the last time you remember, if you're into politics or you watch the news every day, when was the last time you can remember someone not bringing up the Nazis, Hitler, the Holocaust, Auschwitz, concentration camps? When did that last fucking happen? It really, I can't remember a time it hasn't. And in fact, the sad thing is, the people who bring it up the most, they're actually the same people who would have been responsible for it happening in the fucking first place. And they're the people who are, whether they know it or not, whether they mean it or not, are happy to contribute to a climate that is, that potentially could aid and abet a similar incident involving another group at one point, and they'll do it, and they will use the Holocaust and the Nazis as a way of selling, their own form of bigotry by sort of revisionist history. And it's perfectly okay to do this. I mean, this is what's fucked up, is you can use the Holocaust as a way. People will point at, you'll see this a lot with people who are on the right these days. They point at the Muslims and they say, that's what they want. They hate the Jews. Hitler hated the Jews. There were Muslims who were on the side of Hitler, and there were Hitler did. But I mean, there were also lots of them that fought against him alongside us, and who died in the process. So that kind of negates that one. But the whole idea is they'll say, look, they hate the Jews, and then in the process they are completely and utterly okay, and ignoring the fact that Holocaust and being what the Nazis did does not have to involve the Jews. If it happens again, they've got this idea that if it happens again, it's going to be the Jews. No, it could be anyone. It could be any other group. And it wasn't just the Jews in the first place. There was also gay people. There were also Slavs. There was the Romani. There was the Gypsies. There was lots of different types of people, and one of the people, there was interesting, there was a gentleman goes by the name of Satnam Sanghera, who was, Nigel Farage tweeted on Holocaust Memorial Day, he said, we should all reflect on the horrors inflicted on the Jewish people, which is again him just humping sort of the Israel leg of his, because it's about the Holocaust. It should be the Holocaust shouldn't be about the specific groups involved. It should be about the enormity of what humanity is capable of, the horror of what human beings can do if we're motivated enough. And this guy responded to Nigel Farage by reminding him that UKIP did in fact, for the purposes of trying to acquire more tax money from the EU to get more funds for tax, did in fact do a deal with a far right. With a gentleman from the far right who is a Polish MEP who is known for Holocaust denial and being a abhorrent racist. And whenever he's questioned about this, Nigel Farage does this very interesting thing where he will sit there and say, look, sometimes when you're in Europe, and when you're in politics, in order to get to where you want to go, you have to do some deals with some very dodgy characters. And I just think that smacks of massive hypocrisy. I mean, this is a guy who openly, whenever someone posts, whenever one of his idiotic fucking cabinet members party members post something on Facebook, going, you know what we should do? We should mince up the paralysed limbs of the disabled and feed them to the homeless as low-grade sausage meat. Do you know what I want? Nigger skin pyjamas. That's what I want, and all this other stuff. And they get fired immediately. And it's like, we want nothing to do with them. Or he says, we'll fire anyone. We will. If we find out UKIP members, used to be a member of the BNP, we'll sack them. Well, I mean, why? Why would you then sit there and then go do a deal with a guy who's, known for being a Holocaust denial and who who has said, and I quote, that he has declared that the English minimum wage should be destroyed, and that 4 million quote unquote niggers lost their jobs in the US as a result of President John F. Kennedy signing the minimum wage bill. And this is a guy he's quite happy to do a deal with, I mean, doesn't that kind of sort of smack of hypocrisy that he'll sack you? He'll sack you if you say something dodgy on Facebook, but he'll do a deal with you if you say something like that. But anyway, speaking of people who say stupid things, I mean, and also. Interestingly, there's the American Family Association, who, by deemed of having the word American and family in it, are obviously a bunch of fucking Looney Tune fundamentalist nutters, sacked one of my all-time favourite Christian bigots, who is a guy called Brian Fisher. Brian Fisher, who, if you're familiar with Brian Fisher, I don't need to tell you anything. I mean, the man is insane, and he's one of those people who is actually very useful. He's very much like Alex Jones. Whenever I look at, or the Daily Mail, in that sense, Richard Littlejohn, or certain people, Ann Coulter, Rush Limbaugh, whenever I look at what they're saying, whenever something happens, I look at what they're saying, and whatever I say, I go, right, the opposite of what they're saying is right. I mean, that's the truth. And but Brian Fisher, who's a member of the American Family Association, who went on a trip to Israel, who decided beforehand they wanted to sack Brian Fisher. Apparently because of... Now, the reason they want to sack him is apparently because Brian Fisher has this thing about, again, he always goes on about the Nazis. And his problem with the Nazis is interesting because it's not that the Nazis were the Nazis, and did what the Nazis did. His problem with the Nazis seems to be that, they did what they did whilst being gay. He's got this obsession with that the Nazis were created in a gay bar, Okay, but why do you think, the Zig Heil, what's that? That looks, it looks like an erect penis, doesn't it? That's the clue right there. But yeah, this is what, he thinks it was created in a gay bar, but just, because this is what gay people do. I mean, this is what goes on in gay bars, all the time. Just gay people, they get together and discuss how can we manage to, exterminate some group, and shouldn't we also include ourselves as one of the groups that is going to be exterminated? I mean, that's how insane these people are, and yet we want them to get married. And he said some. He's done the whole President Obama is a Kenyan Muslim and blah blah, and he's facilitating jihad, and he's also said some interesting things. But he said, this was the kind of reason they got rid of him. It's got nothing to do with Brian Fisher, opinion. They agree with everything Brian Fisher says, and in fact, the people who they've still got on there have said some even more. Brian Fisher's just, he's just shameless enough, and has just got the courage of his convictions to say it out loud. But he does have this thing about homosexuals in particular. But one of my all-time favourite Brian Fisher moments, and I'm gonna leave this. I'm gonna play this in its full. This is what. This doesn't apply to just Brian Fisher, because Brian Fisher is. We have this idea. There's this. I know it's very easy when you meet these rampant homophobes like Brian Fisher who have this real stick, because there's no reason for anyone to be obsessed or interested in anyone else's sex life, unless they've got there's something going on with them. Now, Brian Fisher was interviewed on the Alan Combs show. Alan Combs, you might remember, was the foil for Sean Hannity on Fox News. He was the big wet liberal. And I'm going to play you this clip. It's very short. It's only about a minute and a half long. But this is Brian Fisher not answering a very straightforward question put to him by Alan Combs.
You also say, Brian, that because gays are selective when it comes to intimate matters, that proves that it's a matter of choice whether you're gay or straight. So simply because you're selective who you might have sex with, because you choose within a particular gender who you're attracted to, that means you can be attracted to either gender?
No, it just demonstrates that people are not obligated to act on every sexual impulse that they experience.
Well, have you ever had a gay impulse?
Alan, I'm not going to talk about.
No, I just wonder. I'm just wondering.
Alan,
because,
I'm not going to go there.
But you talk about other.
Give it a rest.
That's a simple yes or no question.
We're not going to talk about
because
that.
Maybe if you've been able to overcome your gay impulses, and you've been successful to do it, you could be a model for other people who you'd like to see act the same way.
The focus here, Alan, is that everybody experiences sexual impulses, that if they acted on those impulses, it would destroy them.
Well, can you give me an example from your own life? Like, what would be some of yours?
You've experienced them.
I have.
I've experienced them. Every man, every woman has experienced certain sexual impulses that if they acted on them, if they conducted themselves by yielding to those impulses, would destroy them. Ask Tiger Woods about that.
I don't think I've ever had sexual impulses that would destroy the society or the culture or make me a deviant in some way. I mean, I honestly don't think that's ever happened, even in your eyes. But so I'm surprised. But I wonder what impulses you're talking about. If you've had them, I'd love to know what they are.
Well, the focus, Alan, is on sexual conduct, sexual behavior, not on sexual impulse. That's what the focus is.
So you won't tell me whether you've yourself been able to overcome gay impulses.
Alan, give it a rest.
Now, what Brian was trying to say there was yes. He was trying to say yes, he has. He has them a lot, all the time. Because why wouldn't he? You see, this is the problem: is that this idea of shame is put into people. Gay people are convinced that what they should be ashamed of, what they do, what they should be, and so people like Brian Fisher end up being created because they have to go over and above the call of duty in order to show how not gay they are. And if you're like, and anyone like him is exactly the same, but because he's a bigot, he thinks everyone thinks the same. And I think there's one thing we can take from today is thank God we don't all think the same, because if we did, every time somebody did something stupid, we'd all have to sit around apologising for it. This is Richard the Dick Coughlin. This is the Left Wing Propaganda Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Please go and download this episode. Please share it around. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a comment. Please leave a like. And subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher Radio. If you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so. Other than that, I hope you just enjoyed listening. Thank you very much. Good night.